Our conversation with the director of the U.S. Marshals Service. ABC News Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas sat down with Director Ronald Davis as he takes on one of the most important roles in law enforcement as the country faces rising crime and gun violence, increased threats to public officials and law enforcement working to bridge often stark divides that exist in many communities. Their conversation starts off with the results of a recent national fugitive apprehension effort called Operation North Star, which led to the arrest of more than 1,500 violent offenders.
So give us a sense of the operation, how many people you arrested, whether you confiscated guns.
And we identified 10 cities that had the most homicides and shootings. And we basically used this strategic application of enforcement to target not just the city, but the areas of the city that are most plagued by the violence. And during that operation, we arrested over 1,500 fugitives, including 230 murder suspects and over 160 firearms recovered.
Having covered the Marshals, I know part of your mantra is if you focus on the most violent offenders, that you can push down some of the crime rates. Do you still believe that?
We do, and I do. I believe that if you are focusing on those who create the most violence, that are responsible for the most violence, two things end up happening. One, you do remove trigger pullers off the street, those who are shooters, and it impacts crime and violence. You also bring justice to the families that have been terrorized by them.
One of the things that's complicating all of this is police officers being shot at more often. Are you seeing that in terms of what you're hearing from your marshals across the country who are in various task forces as well?
We're definitely seeing an increase on assaults against law enforcement. And as an agency, just last year, we arrested over 6,000 murder suspects. So that's a lot of high-risk engagement and contact.
Why are people more willing to fire at police officers and shoot more rounds when they do it?
I wish I had an answer to that. I do feel that it has increased, but I think the response is probably more critically important. That is making sure that all my deputies and task force officers are prepared, that they're trained, that they have the right equipment, that they can de-escalate appropriately, and so that we can reduce deadly encounters to the extent that we can.
I was looking at the DHS threat environment, and they said this is kind of a witch's brew moment where you have lone wolves, ISIS, white supremacists, people who are angry about political issues and the unstable. How concerned are you about the surge in threats against judges at the federal level and state level? And what are you doing to address it?
I'm very concerned because we've seen over the last 5 years threats and inappropriate communications grow at an exponential rate. To allow judges to be threatened with violence to influence those kind of decisions is a threat to our very democracy. So we have to make sure that the third branch of government can operate without the threat of violence and can do it without fear.
You hear about the mass shootings, you see the victims. What's your reaction as a law enforcement official, and what is your resolve to do something about it as the head of the U.S. Marshals?
So the first reaction is always thinking about the community, thinking about the victims and how, on a beautiful warm day in Highland Park, people are going to a parade to celebrate independence and the family time, and how it was just shattered in the most horrific way. So it first goes to thinking about the families, and then thinking about how this is just becoming too normal and what we need to do as a country. It's such a we problem that you don't have to be the direct victim of a violent crime to be impacted by violent crime. If it's causing you not to go shopping, you're a victim of violent crime. If it's caused you not to go to a parade, you've been influenced by violent crime. And so the more we look at it as an us problem, I think the more global the solutions will be, the more effective they will be.
And how do you do that in a country that has experienced George Floyd, where we know many communities of color are negatively impacted, and yet you need their support in order to help you do community policing, and there's still a level of mistrust? How do you bridge that gap?
I think it's probably, because it is mistrust right now, then that relationship is probably more important now than ever. And I think it goes with communication. It goes with trust, and building trust one interaction at a time, one city at a time. In my 40-plus years in public service and over 30 in law enforcement, I've not yet met a community that did not want effective policing. I think you hear people say they may want respectful policing, but they still want an effective law enforcement response.
Now, you use the word respect. I'm an African-American male. I've been pulled over a few times when I thought it was not justified, and it feels disrespectful. And my heart beats a little faster if it's late at night because I'm not quite sure of what to expect. As a black man yourself, have you been able to use your own experiences in communicating to people?
And I've shared this with going for years with my officers, is that as a father, I have 2 daughters and a son, and I'm gonna focus on my son because young black male, that after 30 years in law enforcement, I know my colleagues are some outstanding, honorable, ethical men and women. But I still had to have the talk with my son before I would give him the keys to that car and what to do when stopped by the police. And the fact that I have to have that conversation, the fact that it's a mandatory course for families of color means we have a lot of work to do. I can accept that the vast majority of men and women in law enforcement are outstanding, but also can accept that we have historical contexts and practices that still have disparate impacts. Let them see why people may be apprehensive, why families are maybe some tension, and understanding from someone that also wears the badge and a uniform like they did. So I think that's the value of diversity.
Our thanks to Pierre Thomas for that.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.